and welcome back to Furniture of the Haunted Mansion, where we analyze every little prop and ornament within the best attraction ever made. Previously, we discussed how the plates in the ballroom are representative of the transformative nature of the Haunted Mansion as a whole, why candles are such recurring motifs, and why you should really pay attention to where cobwebs are placed. This week, we'll be discussing an important supporting element: the chair. How does the common chair reflect the greater narrative surrounding the Haunted Mansion? Well, lean back in your doom buggy and we'll find that out together. Chairs have existed for as long as humanity has needed a place to rest their butts for a little while. However, for many years, chairs were a sign of class. You, the mighty pharaoh, sat in a chair while all those plebeians sat in the sand. Throughout history, chairs flip-flopped between being a marker of social status to being accessible to the masses. That said, there are other cultures who are perfectly content with just sitting on a mat or on the floor and don't see much of a use for a chair. So, it's more of a Western thing, I guess. But as years have passed, and manufacturing has made scarcity a thing of the past, at least in theory, chairs have become widespread and more accessible. So, now that we understand the basics of where chairs come from, how did they end up at the Haunted Mansion? When looking through early concept art, chairs can be seen throughout the development. Here they are in the ballroom table. Here's one in the seance room. Here's one in a bedroom. From the very beginning, chairs were poised to play an important role in the Haunted Mansion. Even our beloved doom buggies are just moving chairs. To think we came so close to not having these important elements. Had Walt gone his wishes, the attraction would have been a walkthrough. And I think we all can agree, a doom buggy-less Haunted Mansion would have been nearly as good. Because it would have meant less chairs in it. I went through and analyzed every frame of a POV video to pick out as many chairs in the ride as I could. Overall, there are about 22 chairs in the entire attraction. And those were just the ones the camera showed. There could be more that are hidden from the view. Plus, the POV was just from Disneyland. I didn't account for Florida or Tokyo, so there are likely more out there. Perhaps we may need to do a follow-up video in the future. But we must finish this video first. The first chair we see is a changing portrait, one of a woman who turns into a cat. Well, I guess it's not really much of a chair as it is a couch, but whatever, same difference. She's lounging on it, staring right at the viewer. She's sitting quite like, well, a cat. Perhaps the choice of making it a couch was due to that. They wanted it to seem similar to a pet bed. But that's just the beginning of the chair's usage in the mansion. Most of the chairs are in the ballroom, due to the party going on in the middle of it. I counted 10 chairs on the table. You have the Roman emperor at one end, and the woman blowing out candles at the other. The ends of the table typically symbolize importance, so of course, the chairs would belong to the person celebrating and the highest ranking official. One of the chairs is knocked over due to a fellow sitting underneath it, and one is pushed to the side so another gentleman can hide underneath the table. And everyone is sitting on the back side. No one is sitting on the front side. That's probably because of blocking when want all the ghosts to have their backs to us. Also, fun fact, the stool that the organist is sitting on does not come from the same source as the organ. It was the stool in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. If you were wondering, that one's at the Walt Disney Archives. One notable chair came from a lost changing portrait, the Burning Miser. An Ebenezer Scrooge type character sitting in a very fancy blue and gold chair, looking very pissed. As the portrait continues, he burns away, letting us see more of the chair's design. The portrait ends with Mephistopheles leaning against the top of the chair, holding a contract for the man's soul. This is a reference to Faust, which is a famous morality tale and super influential, but yada yada yada, that's not really important. Look at that chair! This chair design actually made it to the ride, looking very similar to the one the old woman in the ballroom sits in. And how could we neglect to mention the all-important attic chair? This once belonged to Reginald Kane, one of Constance's unfortunate husbands. We can see it both in person and in his wedding portrait. That chair is also spotted in another attraction, Pirates of the Caribbean. Jack Sparrow is rocking at it as he looks over all his gold. And the design was repurposed for the film, in the dining room at Gracie Manor. And yet another chair in the attic was repurposed from an old display at Tom Sawyer Island. Insert John Lafitte reference here. But the most famous chair of all is the one right next to the endless hallway. One with a face. A chair with a face goes back to the early concept art from the Museum of the Weird, where a chair would come to life and talk to us. Like this is Pee-wee's Playhouse or something. Some have disputed this claim, probably because the chairs don't really look like each other, but a living chair has long been part of the plans for the mansion, so there's a connection there even if by a tiny thread. It plays on humanity's tendencies to look for faces everywhere, which is called face Peridolia. The chair in the mansion is colloquially known as a hidden Donald, due to its reference to Donald Duck. Though, that's probably a coincidence. Sorry, Donald. However, you'll notice that not all ghosts are lucky enough to rest their behinds on a nice cushy chair. Some have to just make do with what they had. Like this lady who's sitting on top of a horse-drawn carriage. Or this sailor who's sitting on the top of a tombstone. Or the mummy who's just sitting inside of his sarcophagus. Perhaps, much like history, this is representative of a kind of social hierarchy within the mansion. All of the ghosts on the inside are of the higher class and get to sit down in nice comfy chairs. Meanwhile, ghosts on the outside are exposed to the elements and have to sit on hard slabs of concrete. A touch ironic, given that actual royalty are among the ghosts in the graveyard. Interestingly, you can find a chair in one place where it really shouldn't be needed. The seance room. The only ghost there is Madame Leota, who doesn't have a behind in need of resting. Sure, the raven is perched on the back of it, but he could have perched somewhere else. Why is it here? Well, there is ample evidence that Madame Leota isn't entirely confined to the crystal ball. She can materialize in the bust in her tombstone, or at her store in Memento Mori. So, there may be times where she's not in her crystal ball. If she can have a full body apparition like the other ghosts, why shouldn't she have a chair to sit in? Though, that brings up a further question. How can ghosts sit? Aren't they ghosts? Wouldn't they just phase right through the seat? They don't need to use doors for that same reason. Not necessarily. It is clear that ghosts can interact with objects. We see ghosts holding glasses, candelabras, and hat boxes. They're able to grab stuff. So, that might mean that they can just sit down like us living folk. I mean, how else can ghosts do something as simple as stand on the floor? But at the same time, can ghosts even feel tired? Do their feet get tired? Would they even need a reason to sit down? All interesting questions to think about, and ones I eagerly look forward to seeing answered by Disney in the future. As you can see, chairs can represent a lot of things within the Haunted Mansion. They can represent social status and the pecking order. They can represent a time of leisure and comfort. They can represent demise and violent ends. They can represent concepts that are long forgotten, only brought back years later. So, you could say that chairs represent the heart of what makes the Haunted Mansion what it is. And I hope it will continue to do so for many years to come. But, unfortunately, this is where it comes to an end. Tune in next time where we talk about the significance of musical instruments, chains, flowers, and so much more. You won't want to miss it. So please sit back in your doom buggy and we will proceed.
April Fools! To me!